Call the meeting to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Otter, calling the roll, please.
Ms. Wilson, Mr. Norris, Ms. Thies,
Here.
Mr. Morris,
Here.
Ms. Weger, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Loudermilk.
Here. Thank you. Open up this segment of the agenda for public comment. As I understand it, there were no communications to the council for this meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Moving on, communication from elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county. Is there anyone who would like to address the council this time?
Brendan Kearns, County Commissioner, District 1. Just a quick update about COVID. We're doing better, it seems, in the county, numbers-wise, but the big thing is that I'm sure you may be aware of, we moved forward with a contract with Sears, or with the mall, or the former Sears place, to provide a clinic operation, and I've received some very positive feedback today about how well that's working. So we're just trying to make it easier access for people. So most of that will be funded with COVID funds that we already have, so there's no need to approach the council and ask for additional funding, but we're definitely moving forward and making sure that we can vaccinate as many people as possible. So just want to take a moment to share that with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kearns. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone from the council who would like to make a statement this time? I would like to thank everybody for being here tonight and welcome the new council members that were absent last month as we had the 2 vacancies. I'm glad to have Councilwoman Wilson with us and Councilman Norris with us, and hope to get them up to speed very quickly. And I know they're both eager to learn and eager to contribute. So excited to have both of them here and look for good things this coming year. So thank you. I would just like to also mention there was, I think the council had seen the email correspondence that had gone out to the department heads and elected officials concerning some expectations. And when I say that, I don't know that the 2 newest members have seen that communication yet, but concerning expectations moving forward for this year with additional appropriations and what that may look like. I know there's a lot of information that needs to be given to the new council members. As you can see, we have 4 new faces up here that we didn't have last year, so there's a lot of information to be gathered, a lot of things to learn for everybody, not just the 4 new members, but the 3 that were here last year as well. The expectation for me is that we make sure that what we are funding is necessary with the chance for budgets and revenue streams to be tighter this year, not knowing what's the impact of the pandemic and revenue streams is going to be like with what we experienced last year. So with that, the email correspondence essentially had asked that prior to approving any additional appropriations outside of the budget, kind of have an outline of what we're looking at moving forward. And I think that's important too for the newest council members so that they can kind of see what these departments are looking for over the next 5 years and also kind of see where they've came from as well. I think it's important to have a snapshot not only moving forward but also what has occurred in the past. So as one council member, that's my expectation for this year, so we can make sure that we're as responsible with the taxpayers' money as possible. Councilman Morris?
Just, do we get
And I guess, Mr. Bramwell, it would go to you. Do we get financial statements, or can we go to you? How do we find out how Edit's doing and that?
Well, the year-end financial reports, we're in the process of putting them together
Okay.
right now. And they'll, when they're completed, you're certainly welcome to a copy, and they're published state to the public on the state's gateway.
Okay. But I didn't know if there was anything like bi-monthly or anything, financial statements that are presented, or an update, or,
Not,
okay.
we haven't.
So any questions, give you a call?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm. Any
Good.
specific questions you have, we can find an answer pretty quick, or if we don't have them, can point you in the right direction.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, you were talking about wanting 5-year projection, and in the budget this year, we included an item for a capital improvement plan, a countywide capital improvement plan. And that's basically what that is a 5-year projection of
Right.
what our revenues are expected to be, and, a plan for the use of those revenues. And, as soon as we can get that underway, I think that's what you're asking for.
Yeah, and I knew the,
And and my idea of what's going to be, it'll encompass the whole county.
yeah, I would hope it would. And I knew the commissioners were going to work on that plan, and we had budgeted
Yeah.
money for that last year to work up such a plan this year. I would hope that touches every department. But I would anticipate there's going to be requests, obviously, prior to that plan being finalized. So, and I wouldn't expect a department head or elected official to spend just an extraordinary amount of time trying to devise some type of plan, but just a framework of what that might look like for them in terms of capital assets and personnel. There's times where we get asked for to fund an additional employee from departments, and then a couple years later they hit us again, and I think it's important for us to have a plan in place, especially since there are so many new members on here that don't maybe know the history and aren't familiar with where things have come from and what the expectations are moving forward. I mean, there's things we covered last year that department heads had talked to us about that were expectations and hopes for them a year or two out, and unfortunately, there's 4 new members that just didn't have that advantage of having that information last year. So I just don't want anything to slip through the cracks. Anything further? There is not. Move on to reports from standing committees. There are none. Reports from select committees. There are none. And obviously this is new to us with the Sunshine Meeting. So there are items on here that are needing to be read for the first reading prior to us hearing as a council. So what I'm going to do before we get into the ordinances relating to appropriations is I'll do the first reading of the items just to make sure that is covered before we speak on those ordinances individually. So the first one, 21, it's ROC number 21-001. The department is a juvenile center. The fund is juvenile center non-reverting fund. The ask is $15,000 in institutional supplies, $3,000 wearing apparel, $5,000 other supplies, $5,000 education and training, $12,000 building repair for a total of $40,000. Next is ROC number 21-002, Prosecutor's Office, General Fund. Eliminate 1 part-time trial deputy and increase salary of remaining 6 part-time trial deputies. Next is ROC number 21-003, Sheriff's Department, E-Share Asset Forfeiture. 4990 vehicles. It's additional appropriation. Ask for $29,994. Next, ROC number 21-004, Auditor's Office, General Fund.
Mr.
And that-
President, Mr. President, could you indicate the ordinance number as well when you're doing this for first
Sure,
reading?
sure. So the ordinance number for the Juvenile Center. It's additional appropriation ordinance 2021-03, ROC number 2021-001. The Prosecutor's Office, that was ROC number 2021-002. Salary Ordinance number 2021-01. Also attached to that would be the Reduction of Appropriation Ordinance, which is 2021-01. And again, that's part of request of council 2021-002. The Sheriff's Department request is ROC 21-003, additional appropriation ordinance number 2021-01. The auditor's request is ROC number 21-004 out of the general fund to create 2 additional positions. The additional appropriation would be ordinance 2021-05. We also have Honey Creek Fire Protection District out of the cumulative fire fund for new equipment, $230,000. The additional appropriation ordinance 2021-04. Requested council number 2021-06. And then also the additional appropriation request from the auditor, we have 2021-005. Additional appropriation ordinance number 2021-02. We kind of went in a circle there a little bit. Any questions about that? Okay. Moving on. First up, we have is anyone here from the prosecutor's office?
No, I can't see anybody.
Okay.
Not standing right there.
Salary ordinance 2021-01, request of council 2021-002, prosecutor's office, general fund. That was to eliminate 1 part-time trial deputy, increase salary of remaining 6 part-time trial deputies. They're not here, so I'm going to move on. Next up, we have the auditor's office request. Salary ordinance 2021-02, request of council 2021-004.
The salary ordinance, I'd like to table that. I haven't had time to work on descriptions or any of that yet.
Okay. So Auditor Bramble is asking to table that at this time, and that would be salary ordinance 2021-02, request council 2021-004. And then the additional appropriation further down in the agenda, is that attached to that as well?
It's got COVID relief and
Okay,
such in it too.
okay.
So 2021
That is the additional appropriation for
Okay.
the, is that for the position? Okay. So would we like to table that as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's
So-
04.
So item number 7 on the agenda, under ordinances relating to appropriations. Additional appropriation ordinance 2021-05, request the council 2021-004, auditor's office. That is tabled as well. Moving on, we have additional appropriation ordinance 2021-02, ROC 2021-005, County General Fund. And is that, is that going to be you?
What page is it? 05, 20.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did we skip one?
Yeah, I did. But why don't you want to go ahead and address that now since,
Okay, what number is it?
it's the CARES Act?
Yeah, that's, oh, I don't have the next page.
Go on page 8.
Yeah, that's for what was remaining of the CARES Act fund. And need to reappropriate what wasn't used at the end of last year. The 2.7 million probably isn't final because we're still in the process of transferring.
Right.
Numbers, I want to make sure that we are perfect on those last numbers, but the 2.7 should be what is left after the end of 2020, and that will need to be reappropriated for those expenses that you are having at this point, for paying for fares and the rest of the COVID. So that's what this is doing, is bringing you back the balance to reappropriate for us to use.
Well, the big items that'll be paid out of there, we're going to be continuing to pay contact tracers for the foreseeable future. And now we're ramping up expenses for vaccinations. So those will be I expect that to be ongoing throughout the year, and it's unpredictable what the final cost will be.
Does everyone understand what the CARES Act is and how that money is used, generically speaking? I was going to have Vicki explain it to everybody.
Well, what happened if you want,
Yeah.
I'll give you the history. During last year, the county was allotted a little over $3.4 million out of the CARES Act. And it was initially expected that it would be used to pay, coronavirus-related expenses. Well, after a couple of iterations of different rules that the state gave us on how we could spend it and how we could claim it, towards the end of the year, probably October, November, they decided that, oh, well, we're going to allow you just to claim the reimbursement for all your public safety expenses throughout the year. So we filed a claim for sheriff and jail salaries for $3.4 million that we had spent over a couple of months, and they gave us a lump sum distribution to the CARES Act fund. We were then instructed to transfer that to the general fund, and that from that point on, the expense, what we spent it on, had to be authorized through the normal appropriation process. appropriated the entire $3.4+ million last year to be used on CARES Act expenses. But as with any other appropriation, it dies at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, we still had remaining that approximately $2.7 million left, which now needs to be reappropriated for virus purposes. That's the short story. Any questions?
Does it have a lot of like specificity as far as like what it has to be used for? Is it, I mean, does it
No,
have to be
at
for
this-
materials, or can it be for staffing? I mean, I heard you guys say contact tracers, or,
We've, not knowing what specific types of expenses or from what department they will come from, we've set up a separate department within the general fund, and we're basically out appropriating it for a very general line item. But what we sent out to departments, now we were getting, people were buying their masks and different, cleaning items and all that type of things. And I anticipate they still will be paying for that, but we've set like a limit of $500 that can be spent without commissioner's approval. So any big items like, that over that amount, new equipment, or like my big windows over there, we've asked that they get the commissioner's approval prior to ordering the items. So we've got some control over where it's going.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding CARES Act? Any questions or comments regarding this additional appropriation ordinance? There are none. Go back to item 3. Additional appropriation ordinance 2021-01, ROC 2020-003, E-share asset forfeiture. It's a Sheriff's Department request.
Hello. President Loudermilk, members of the council, John Placerville County Sheriff. The additional appropriation is kind of misleading. The money that I'm asking for is already in an account that is from seized assets from our drug task force detectives assigned to the sheriff's office. What I'm merely asking is to transfer, there's about $40,000 in that account, is to move $30,000, roughly $29,994, to purchase a vehicle for one of our task force detectives. I've done this in the past with E-share money. We're not asking for additional money from the council or from the taxpayers. It's from seized money our task force has already taken. So I'll answer any questions you may have at this point.
Any questions from council?
I do.
Councilman Thompson?
Sheriff Plasky, did you turn in a 5-year plan?
This
For your
was
department.
submitted to the council before that email came out from President Loudermilk, so I have not.
Okay. Is this I know it's a new vehicle, but is it new? Are you guys replacing a vehicle, or is this an additional vehicle?
Yes, I sent this letter to the council. It's to replace the 2017 Dodge Ram currently in use, which will go to replace a 2007 Chevy Silverado that we use for maintenance and hauling of supplies. It was traded in. It had outlived its purpose. It wasn't worth fixing anymore.
Are there issues with that vehicle now, you say?
That one is already gone, the 2007 Silverado, so we're without that vehicle. So we're going to replace the one that's missing with the 2017 currently in use, which will be replaced by this 2021 vehicle we're requesting.
Okay. I think from my perspective, I guess, my worry about this is going forward. Obviously, that's money that you can use
Correct.
for the vehicle or whatever you want to use it for. I think my fear is, I think we probably have cameras coming up. You've got, this is different than commissary, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have money for cameras, or is that going to be another request from the council?
That will be a future request for council, and the current numbers on that, we can go ahead and get into that if you like. The estimate I got that I want to go with is $550,000 for 5 years, so it'll be about $110,000 a year. But that has to go through the bidding process and the approval through the commissioners first before it comes to council. But that's the same body cam systems that Terre Haute City Police have. I think it's the best one out there now, and I would support getting that when it gets to that point. But to answer your question shortly, I do not have the funds to pay for that every year. And if we want to talk about commissary account, the commissary by statute is not to supplement budget items from the council. It's merely to, or not to replace them, it's to supplement budget items.
So, according to you, this vehicle is a need rather than a want?
Correct.
Okay.
And it's on a replacement schedule similar to what the Terre Haute Drug Task Force detectives go through. In the past, the prosecutor's office used to purchase those for us. They didn't on my last one, so I had to get it out of this, and I didn't ask this time because I figured I'd get the same answer.
Okay.
And I didn't want to ask council for additional appropriation, although this says additional appropriation, it's for money that I already have, not asking money that I don't have.
For clarification, that is an additional appropriation. A transfer is, when you transfer an appropriation, it's an existing appropriation.
Well, it may be worded that way, but it's money we already have in an account, so it's not asking for money I don't have.
The appropriation is the authority to spend.
Correct, but for clarification, for those who are coming from the city, as maybe as Councilman Morris is, and those who have taken over as department heads in the county, the city does do theirs a little bit different, and if you do talk to State Board of Accounts the way it is worded, these are separate funds that aren't, even though they might go through the approval of the county council to do the additional appropriation, they do just call them transfers, basically from their receipt, what we would call the receipt line item into their expense line item. So they call it a transfer in because it is their money. They already have that money. On the county side, you call it an additional appropriation. We do, because we're asking the county to go ahead and do it. It's the same thing, okay? It's just the wording. So what you're hearing them say transfer is really the same thing. But there's the way that they word it on the city side, and if you look at our appropriations, you will see it is different. And I have discussed it with State Board, and it is really the same thing. They just transfer from, as I would say, Councilman Morris, you see that they come in from the grant or those other funds, and they say, I just want to transfer into the expense line item.
Correct.
That's what they're doing here. They're basically transferring in from his receipt line items of this fund. But in the county council requires that they appropriate every fund. So that's why it looks like it's written up as an additional appropriation, because it wasn't passed originally in the budget for this budget during this time. So they call it an additional appropriation. So for those of you, there's an explanation of how the finances work. Does that help, Sarah?
It's confusing, but yes,
Is that-
thank you.
The money's there,
Correct,
yes.
I don't have anything.
thank you.
But even with all that said, it still requires council approval to
Absolutely,
transfer.
absolutely, yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I'm here, President Loudermilk.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Just to help me out, what kinds of things are typically bought out of this kind of fund? Is it?
out of the E-share, there is I believe it's a Indiana code that covers that, or maybe an ordinance that covers that. I know training in the past has been purchased out of that. They had some speakers come in or conduct training. Vehicles have been, equipment has been. That's just a short list. I don't want to tell you wrong, but those are 3 that I know come out of that, or have come out of that in the past. Of the seized asset account? Do you have that? Because I don't have that with me. Okay. Yes, yes.
Did you have anything else, Councilwoman Dees? Did you say that the 2007 Chevy Silverado, correct?
Yes, yes.
It's gone?
Yes, sir.
Did we get any payment for that or trade-in
We
value or
got a
anything?
trade-in value for that, yes.
What'd they do for us on that?
I could look it up real quick.
I'm just curious. Are we going to keep, we're keeping the 2017 Dodge Ram,
That was the plan, yes.
and that's just used to pick up supplies?
It's used for supplies. The jail uses it sometimes when they get a larger amount of items. We use it when we get tires to stockpile when we need them for cars that go over to West Terre Haute, which we use the school to work on our vehicles for larger vehicle repair items. That's the main use that it's for. And we could use it as a spare if somebody's vehicle went down as well.
I mean, if I'm being honest here, and I'm going to be honest.
Sure.
I have a cause for concern to, rather than trade the 2017 Dodge Ram in and get some type of value out of it for this 2021 Dodge Ram, rather than making that 17 vehicle a supply hauling vehicle and just kind of sitting around and just being used at leisure, I would have hoped that we would have looked at maybe trading that 17 on the 21 and trying to get some value out of that instead of just using it as an extra vehicle. I mean, it seems like we have plenty of trucks available to haul supplies if that's what we need. And I know the commissioners have trucks and they have access to helping out with that if need be. Just seems like a truck that's in pretty good shape just to be used for hauling stuff. And that's just my personal thoughts on it.
Sure.
You know, I recognize, like you said, that those seized asset funds, they go to those departments to use, how they see fit, and I understand that completely. We might just be able to get a little bit more, maybe even another vehicle, or closer to another vehicle if we traded this 17 in instead of just using it just to haul supplies and vehicle maintenance.
Okay. And then we just ask for commissioner vehicles to haul stuff when we need to.
Well, I think how many trucks do you have in your fleet right now?
We have 6 that I know of. Well, I'm sorry, 8.
Okay. And the
They're
jail
take-home
commander
vehicles.
has a truck, true?
Yes, yes.
Which I think jail supplies could probably be hauled in.
Okay,
So that's just my thoughts.
all right.
I mean,
Thank
just
you.
something to think about. As far as we touched the topic of the body cameras. So I assume it's a 5-year contract,
Yes.
$550,000, so we're to the tune of about 110 a year.
Yes.
I don't know how far along you guys are with any agreements or anything like that. I agree with you. I think from what we've learned, that probably is the better of the programs to go with, in my opinion. Do we have any plan in place as to how that would be funded? Any thoughts about that?
That's what I was going to ask in the budget for council.
Okay. Any thoughts about using commissary money
We could use some commissary money for that. I just
to
didn't
help
want to use.
offset?
Yes, but not to replace any funding for it from the council, from the general fund.
Because technically, we don't have any funding right now for it.
Correct.
So I'm just looking at different options.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not opposed at all to supplementing that with commissary.
And is it a 5-year minimum contract? Is that how it's structured?
It's 5-year minimum, and then we did ask about the next year, which is basically the same as for each year after. That may go down depending on or demand or new
Right.
products coming out there, but right now that's the best number we have.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. Anyone else have questions or comments? No? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have additional appropriation ordinance 2021-03, ROC number 2021-001, Juvenile Center Non-Reverting Fund. I think the information can be found on page 9 in your booklet.
Mr. President, members of the council, I sent a letter out in December, and some of the new council members I just resent the letter to. There's a couple changes on the last page I want to go real quick, but this is another example of no tax dollars being used. It's an appropriation of money from a non-reverting fund that was set up last year that takes money that we capture from housing out-of-county detainees and then invoicing for those services, and then this money has built up for a little bit, and then, of course, we have, what we've either not received from those other counties or what we anticipate to get. So I'm asking for $40,000 to be put into this fund. Last year during the budget process, I wanted a budget set up for this fund so that we could not have to bother the council with coming back all the time to be able to utilize this revenue. But this is the first year we're really using it. So maybe we, come budget time, we can actually set up a working budget to have. I'm asking for $15,000 to be placed in institutional supplies. Those are things like detainee clothing, bedding, hygiene products. Repair to buildings, $12,000. Those are heating, cooling, maintenance, repair, upgrades, door replacements, cell equipment, doors. They don't make the locks anymore at the vendor we currently use, so the locks that need to be replaced are about twice as expensive, probably due to COVID. That's a new vendor for the individual cells, so that's a cost that's going to go up exponentially next year. Education and training, all full-time staff required to have 40 hours of annual and 120 hours for new hirees. And so we need to increase our education training, really what we pay for that. Safety, the duty belts, handcuffs, things that detention officers use, radios. Of course, you well know those things go out all the time. And then, of course, it's clothing for the staff, uniforms and such. So a total of $40,000. We have $33,900 in the fund right now at this very second, with $15,000 that have been invoiced, and we're waiting to receive that. And then as of February 1st, we have just right at $15,000 that still needs to be invoiced for what we've done in January and February. So we're looking at about $60,000 that could be in that fund if everyone paid their bills and we invoiced everybody. But you know how the county governments work. We see a kid in December for 10 days, and then maybe the kid is released, so he's from Clay County. We get that invoice to them a week after he's released. They process it at their county auditor, and so it may take another 30 days before that invoice is sent back to us and payment is received. And once we get the check, we bring it to the auditor's office, and then it's applied to our account. So when I say the money's good, money's good, we just may not have received it yet. So, but the actual true numbers of what we've got is about $33,900 definitely in the bank, with about $15,000 that's been billed that we've not received yet, and then another $15,000 that is still yet to be billed. Those kids have been here, we just haven't billed them yet. or they're currently there, and the days are continually adding up. So this will help us do a lot of things we have coming up. You know, I went to the commissioners meeting today, and they were able to pay for some doors. So that's one thing that we can check off our list that this money would be used for. We have a door that is actually for part of our emergency action plan that allows kids to get out in case of a fire. That door won't even open. So we're getting those doors replaced. We're doing some upgrades, some maintenance that quite frankly should have been done years ago that just wasn't. And many of you, I thank you for coming through and kind of getting an idea of what we need. The good thing about this is every county around us that's paying for this project. So this is Clay County, Putnam County, Owen, Putnam County a lot, Owen, Park, Warren, Fountain counties. They're the ones that are having detainees brought here. And we reached out to Sullivan County as well. So we still have plenty of room for local detainees that may need detained for whatever reason. And we're taking the out-of-county kids, and that's what this is for. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from council?
I do.
Councilman Thompson?
Mr. Loudermilk, and just to catch everybody else up, last year, did we give you money out of this account?
Did we use money out of it?
Yes.
Yes, I think about $10,000.
What was that for?
We use that mostly to take care of detainee clothing. So they were in orange uniforms, and we're not going to be wearing orange uniforms. They're not inmates. They're not going to be there for an extended period of time, and I don't want them to get the appearance or get the feeling that they're criminals. So we're there to address their problems and to try to make sure they don't come to Sheriff Plasty at the jail. So we're doing our part not to have a feeder program there. We put them in blue uniforms, and by doing that, reduce the appearance, and to replace all those uniforms, also to add to some of our stock, the underwear, socks, towels. We were having white towels. We bought brown towels because the white towels looked like they were gray. So we got out of using bleached whites. So really it was all bedding, blankets. We have things called suicide smocks, which are like a smock or a tunic that they would wear that's for people that are risk of hurting themselves. So that's what we purchased with that $10,000.
And the building repair now, you've got 12,000 on here?
Well, that's what we'd like to put in it, yes. There are just a lot of things that need to happen over there. I could give you a laundry list. We don't have a very good heating system for the lobby where the deputies work, so it's constantly cold. The heating system we have there has not been maintained well. We need to get that either replaced or upgraded. I don't even know what that costs. We've got about 6 different furnaces in that facility that all need maintained and serviced. And since I've been there, which has been over a year, none of it's been done. So if we go to our maintenance, they're probably going to tell us to contract that out. We're going to go to a vendor and to do all of those furnaces. I'm sure it's going to be pricey. So this is just going to help supplement our current general fund budget by using some of this revenue to help out with those projects.
And that's on top of what the commissioners already did?
Say again?
That's on top of what the commissioners have already done?
Yeah, so what we did was we had 3 doors. The south door to the building was rusted, and we're getting a new security system. The council graciously approved that last year. They're starting work February 22nd. And so that door is a swipe card door, and it was rusted, so why put the new security system in if we're going to have to replace that door anyway? So we looked at that door, the complete west door, which is the door to the outdoor rec area. It's just virtually unsafe. The closure that's on top of the door is rusted out and hanging down. All 3 sides of the door are rusted. We spray it every day with WD-40 to try to hope that the lock will work, and then that's how we get it open. So that needs to be replaced. And then the control room door, when the facility was built in 2001, it was a $6 million facility that was value engineered down to $2 million. And so many of the changes in construction appeared with, lesser equipment. So the windows in the control room aren't, security windows. And so we're worried that someone could bust that door out, if it's a solid glass door, and enter the control room, and once you get in, you can open up any door. So we want to make sure we have that secured. And so we're getting a solid door with no glass so they can't get in. And then probably as we, can come up with revenue, we're going to start replacing that glass around that control room to make it more secure.
The last question I have they started on the cameras yet, the security
On the
system?
cameras?
Yes.
So I just got an email today because I was curious about what they've done. What they do is they mobilize a team and purchase the equipment, program the equipment at their home office, which is in Evansville, and then they bring the equipment up here to install it. So everything except the servers that hold the data, for the 180 days that we need, all of the cameras have been are on site. All the equipment's on site except for those 2 servers. So they expect them to be there next week, and then they will begin installation on the 22nd. And then on the 22nd, it should take them, they told me 6 weeks, which I thought was extremely fast, but they said 6 weeks they will be done.
Has anything changed with pricing on those?
So you all approved the lowest quote we got, which was $231,000. The bid came in at $234,000. So this could help with the $3,000 difference. That we've also, we've added a couple extra licensing because the deputy sheriffs that work in the very front, I don't know where the metal detector is, vestibule, whatever that's called, they just sit at a desk. So today we had IT running wires. We're getting 2 monitors. We're going to put those cameras on those monitors so that those deputies are sitting, at that metal detector will be able to monitor the cameras in the building as well. They're really sitting there blind. They monitor people that come in, but they can't tell if there's a fight in the parking lot or if something's going on. So we're adding some additional licensing. That may add a little bit extra money, but again, some of what we've got here for either repair to building or institutional supplies could help cover that.
Okay. So rather than could help, will it help?
This?
Yes.
Oh,
Will that
yeah.
pay?
Yeah. We won't have to come back. This will be more than enough. We thought that the bid and what we wanted to do would come in near 250. It came in at 234. So and some change. So we're looking at maybe $4 or $5 grand that we'll have to use out of here. That's it.
I have nothing further.
Sure.
Can you speak in the microphone? I'm deaf and I can't hear.
I didn't have it on, I'm sorry. The 3 doors that you described, did the commissioners actually buy any of those doors for you so that money could be offset in this, or?
Did they buy the doors?
Yeah, did they provide money for doors? Is
The
that what
new
you told
ones that I want to get?
The 3 doors?
So I contacted the maintenance department and said, hey, we need to look at some new doors. They told me to go to a vendor to get a quote. I did, but that vendor has changed their operations, so they don't install the doors anymore.
Okay.
They'll sell you the doors, but then you got to find someone to put them in. Well, this is in brick and mortar, and so it's something that's a little bit more than what the maintenance can do here. So we had to go and get a couple of quotes. So I met with Commissioner Schweitzer, who I just had one quote, and he said, let's get another one so we can, have some competitiveness and a little sharpening of the pencil, if you will. And then I brought those quotes today to the commissioners meeting. They had approved previously the purchase of the equipment, the doors, and then today they approved the vendor to install them. So after the meeting, we faxed that over, or emailed it rather, and they've accepted it. So Sycamore Engineering is putting the doors in, and Crossroads Doors and Hardware, or whatever they're called, they're the ones we're getting the doors from.
I guess I'm just curious as to how many dollars would be coming out of this that's, you've asked for, that the commissioners have approved to pay for.
Now, what was that again?
I guess I'm just not understanding if there's dollars that need to come off of your request that the commissioners, or is that just something they've already approved?
So when this was written in December
Yeah,
and
okay.
requested, we didn't know what was going to happen.
Okay,
They've agreed to pay for that, so now we won't have to buy doors.
Okay.
But we still need that money for any number of things that you see. Did you get my letter?
yes, I
Yeah.
did.
So like any number of things, it would be, again, some of the things we need are, we don't have any pass-through doors. So when you feed a detainee, you have to open the entire door instead of passing it through. If there's a behavioral issue, we'd like to keep the staff separate.
Sure.
Again, the locks are an issue. They are old and they're starting to need to be replaced, and so we're going to have to do that. We talked about the windows that need replaced, and then of course you don't have the opportunity to walk through and see, but we have a ceiling that's fallen down in the rec area. I don't mean that it's I mean it's falling down, and so we need to get something to cover that or get that replaced, and that's not even been talked about. So I also have a back wall to the building, the south wall, that's got an expanding crack of about a half an inch now, which means the back wall is falling off. So I've got to get a structural engineer in there to tell us how we're going to repair it or what we need to do. Well, I'm sure that that's going to cost some money just to have him give us a consultation. That's where this would come from.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Yep.
Any other questions from council?
I have a logistical question. So it sounds like some of the money is there, but we're still waiting for some of it to come in. Will we be waiting until that money comes in, or how's that?
So, yes, the money, $33,900 of the $40,000 that I'm asking for is there, but we're not interested in spending it tomorrow. So we will wait and work with the auditor's office to make sure that the money is in the account prior to doing it. What this does for us is it allows us to be able to have the money on paper and then waiting for the real money to get in the account. So we don't have to keep coming back every month saying, okay, now I need $300 for the furnace, and can I have $600 for, we'll be able to, to get one lump sum to get it and then wait. Obviously we're not going to spend 40 grand tomorrow. We don't have any intention of doing that. We don't have any plans. But by the time that money, there could be money coming in tomorrow that from Clay County, depending on how quick they process their invoices, or, so it's just kind of a trust thing. I promise I won't spend any money until it's in the account.
You.
Anyone else? So,
Thank you.
oh,
Oh, sorry. I thought I was getting away.
so with these, looks like there's 5 items.
Yes, yeah.
Do you currently have, under these 5 items, money allotted in your 2021 budget? Is this to supplement that, or what are we looking at here?
So I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I know I have some of them, institutional supplies, repair to building, training, education, safety. We have some money, and yes, this is to supplement that.
Okay.
When I came to y'all to do the budget last year, I was focusing on that security system. So we probably needed to increase safety. We probably need to increase, staff clothing. But I didn't want to address those things because the safety was such an issue with the cameras. So, this is going to be just to supplement that. I would like to use, this money first, so that any general fund money that's left over can go back to the general fund. I don't intend on spending everything if we don't need to, but this is money from out-of-county people, so, this is free money, quite frankly. I'd like to use this first, but to answer your question, this is to supplement what we have already budgeted.
Okay.
I don't know if we have a clothing line item. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know if there is either. I don't
I mean, by next
don't
week,
recall if there was, but
yeah, okay.
But, yeah, I guess I just wanted to check and make sure if we already had items available, revenue available in those line items, and then also, secondly, make sure that these requests weren't denied at budget time. I'd just be curious to know what kind of conversations were had about anything like this.
About these,
Right.
I don't know that we discussed,
Your 2021 budget was adopted as submitted at the $30,000. So there was 6,000 in institutional supplies, 3,000 in wearing apparel, 5 in safety, 9 in building repair, 5,000 in education and counseling, 2,000 in incentives.
I mean, I don't think we turned any money in last year because of some of the things we needed to do over there. And any additional revenue we get from this would be to supplement it.
I know you said you need to get somebody to look at that south wall. There's a crack in the south wall, and you need somebody to look at that to see what the extent of damage is and what that might look like. Do you have an idea of what the current, absent the south wall, what the current building needs are in terms of repairs?
So I don't,
In terms of a ballpark dollar amount, I guess. I mean, you covered some of the items that, like the rec room, ceiling, and some different things that really stood out. You talked about getting some doors already taken care of to the commissioner's office today.
yes.
I mean, is there a host of things that we need to be on the lookout for in terms of repairs?
I mean, I just don't have any sense to know what it would cost.
Okay.
We're going to have to address it because they filled it with caulk and painted over it, and now the caulk is starting to separate from the brick. So, I mean, I know that there's expansion joints, and that may be all this is, and it's just kind of concerning people, but one of the first things that they showed me when I walked in the building, when I took the job, was that crack, and we don't know if the ground has settled, or if it's pulled away, and it won't take very much to fix, or if it's going to be like a major overhaul. The good thing about some of these line items, like institutional supplies, that really is going to take some of the COVID stuff that we, obviously, since the budget wasn't increased, but there's more requirements now. We purchased a $350 fogger, and we now fog all the offices, not as high quality as like ServPro does, but the same type of thing. So, those were budget items that we never dreamed we'd have to purchase. And then the chemicals that go in there. We just purchased a $12,000 washer and dryer combo because the commercial dryers, we had a residential dryer and washer instead of commercial. So we just purchased those. That money is going to deplete some of our general fund money, and then we'll be supplemented with this. As far as the back wall goes, there are really 2 or 3 things that we need to do over there this year. The ceiling, look at that back wall, and we need to, unfortunately, talk about a vehicle. Could we transport kids all the way up to LaPorte, in Indianapolis, and we need to make sure we have a vehicle that can go through the snow, that can be trusted, not break down on the side of the road. We took a detainee to the jail to have him looked at by a nurse, and the vehicle died in the Sallyport. We had to have it towed out of the Sallyport. So those are things, the sheriff's department's, always trying to help us out. They've got mechanics that work on things, but, eventually we're going to have to look at something that's going to be more sustainable.
Sure.
But we'll do everything we can to use budgeted money and this money,
Are you generally at capacity?
I'm sorry,
Are you generally at capacity with the juveniles?
at full capacity. So COVID has slowed us down this year, but like right now, we have, I think 17.
How many of those are out of county?
19 is the capacity. But it fluctuates because today we had 3 releases, but then who knows what will happen tomorrow.
What's generally the split between Vigo County juvenile offenders and out of county that you hold at a time? Is it half?
Us versus them,
Yeah,
we're holding more out of county. And we haven't turned anybody away, in county or out of county, because of overcrowding or something, or not having the beds.
sure.
But I think that the Terre Haute Police Department has slowed down with respect to juvenile arrests. They're trying to have a more proactive approach, like runaways. We used to get runaways a lot, and met with the person in charge of the juvenile division and said, listen, we hold them for 24 hours and send them home. So why don't you officers try sending them home first? Let's let the parents start being parents, and then if we can't be, or if there's extenuating circumstances, if there's some type of molestation or assault or abuse, then we'll take them till we get DCS involved. But we're seeing, it was starting out maybe 70-30, Vigo County kids versus out of county. Then it went to about 50-50, and it's probably 60-40 now. So if we have 10 kids, maybe 3 or 4 of them are out of county, the rest of them are local. It's odd you say that because we have 3 kids in there right now that live in Vigo County that committed crimes in adjacent counties. So they're being held
Right.
and by these, by Clay and Vermilion and Park, but they live in Vigo County.
What's
So their
the,
counties are going to have to pay for them.
right.
Even though
What's
they're
the daily rate you receive for out-of-county housing of a juvenile offender?
How much we daily?
Yeah,
125. Used to be 110. We increased it to 125 and started adding mileage and drug testing. So we can buy a drug testing kit for $5. We charge 15, and then I think we charge 50 cents a mile for every mile that we transport the kid. Some of the counties are still doing Zoom for their hearings, which is good, so we can just set them up for a Zoom. It doesn't take staff members, but especially if they're planning on releasing the kid or transferring him to another facility, we charge mileage. And that's half of what Southwest charges in Vincennes. So when we're competing with them, if you will, we can offer 6 hours of education, 2 counselors, 2 full-time teachers, a special ed teacher, the great jail food we receive at only a mere $125 a day. And plus, it's closer to these counties so that the parents want to come and visit. I have a pretty liberal visitation policies on Wednesdays and the weekends, and they can earn credits to be able to get phone calls and things like that. So, the parents can come and visit their kids more often.
thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Norris?
Norm, we had spoke last week, and you had made a comment about the flooring and stuff. Is that something that you already have budgeted, or is that something that would need to come out of it? As
The
far as-
flooring?
Yes.
So the council gave us money in our food line item, and due to COVID, we didn't spend all of that last year. So we transferred money from the food line item into, I'm not sure, repair a building or something. And that was $30,000 that we transferred. And then the total cost to do the floors was $45,000. And I used $15,000 from other areas within my budget. So to answer your question, that was all paid for out of last year's money.
Okay, but there are still other areas that need to be done, is that correct?
There is what?
Other areas that still need to be done as far as
As far as the
flooring?
floor being finished?
Yes.
Because we can't kick everyone out for a few days and let them do the work and then bring everybody back to work, they have to do it in phases. So they've done 2 of the 5 phases so far, and they will start next Monday on the 3rd of the 5 phases.
Okay.
This is a process. They have to sand everything down to the bare concrete, remove all the old epoxy, then they put a layer down, and they put these flakes down, then they let that dry. That's a 24 hours. Then they come back and they put a sealer over the top of it, then they let that dry for 24 hours, then you can walk on it. So just the sanding in each cell that they did, they had hand sanders in the corners, so it was very tedious. You have 8 cells on top, 8 cells on the bottom, so it's a lot of work. So they've done probably 40% of the facility so far, and still probably have 2 more weeks left.
And that was all still included in that 45 that it cost from last
That's all
year?
included last year.
Okay.
It's not part of this at all.
And then when they're doing those things and you have to move detainees around, is that something where we're going to have to house them in other areas, or are we going to be able to keep them in-house?
Now, what we did was, with the floors, we moved them from the first floor to the second floor. We contacted ServPro, got some of their equipment. I don't know what it is, stuff that makes you not smell stuff. And they put those big machines in with fans, and they took this, that's what it is, the epoxy smell makes you sick. So they put those machines in, hung fans, and the kids were fine. And then the next day, we took the fans down, and we've got those, actually, we still, Mr. Overton's been nice enough to let us keep that equipment until the next process. Just said, call us when you're completely done with everything. And so, yes, good community involvement from a lot of people in the community that want to support kids, so. Yep. Anybody else?
Any further questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have additional appropriation ordinance 2021-04, request of council 2021-006, Honey Creek Fire Protection District.
President Laudermilk, council members and staff, I'm Joe Shackelford. I'm the chairman of the Honey Creek Fire Protection District trustees. This additional appropriation request is to purchase 6 LifePak 15 defibrillator units. They are going to cost $29,000 each. 1 service protection plan for a year for all 6 of those units, and 2 CPR compression systems. What that is, and those, the total purchase price is $229,700 and some dollars. We have, at the current time, $273,000 in our cumulative equipment fund checking and savings account. We also have another certificate of deposit in that account that is not covered in this. We just renewed it for a year, so it's for $337,000. So the money is there. The fire department attempted to get a grant to purchase this equipment last fall. They requested it in September. They found out in December that the grant request was denied. And the reason it was denied was the fire department corporation's tax exempt status was wrong for the foundation to approve the grant. So the fire department has scheduled a vote at the shareholders meeting, which is the 8th of February, and they're going to vote to change the tax status and then go to the Internal Revenue Service to try to get a permanent change in our tax status. So the fire district traditionally buys equipment and supplies for the department. The defibrillators that we are using now are 15 years old. They cannot be upgraded and brought to current standards and literally are falling apart. Several of them are literally held together with duct tape, trying to still use them. So this is a very urgent request, and I will say that in December of last year, the fire district bought one of these CPR compression systems for the fire department. We're requesting 2 additional with this appropriation. The CPR compression system has been credited with one complete save on a cardiac arrest victim. He's still alive and dealing today. And there have been several where they lost the victims. But in one example, they started at the scene and used that compression system, and they kept it on the patient all the way through the entire treatment in the emergency room till he was finally declared dead. They could not bring him back. And for CPR, you need to be able to do, for effective CPR, you need 100 compressions a minute. And if you think about trying to do compressions on a person at 100 a minute, you're going to wear your firefighter, your ambulance personnel, everybody out. This thing is a battery-operated unit, and it literally does the job. So if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them. I appreciate the council's consideration of this request.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council? Looks like you're getting off easy, Joe.
I don't know about easy, but, you know.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Moving on. The next two appropriations, additional appropriation ordinance 2021-05 we spoke about earlier from the auditor is tabled. And then reduction of appropriation ordinance 2021-01, request of council 2021-002, prosecutor's office. It appears there still is not anybody here to speak on those requests, so we'll move on. Next is an ordinance establishing sex and violent offender fees and fund. In reviewing, well, I guess you could, if you'd like to speak on it, Sheriff. I mean, I guess you can, but I don't know that we'll have any action this month as the request came in after the deadline.
Okay.
But you can speak on it, and then I guess that keep from having to speak on it later on.
And I
So
can,
since you're
man,
here.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea, almost every county in Indiana has this except for Vigo, and it barely makes the sex offender pay a $50 fee to register. And I've been talking with my sex offender guy that does all this. He thinks our numbers are higher because people from other counties register here because they don't have to pay. So then they reduce the numbers that are actually here in Vigo County. But the money would go to the non-reverting account that's up for your consideration. And again, I would have to come to council to get permission using that money for whatever. And the sole purpose is for what we need for the sex offender operation. That's what it would be for. And I'll answer any questions that I didn't explain in that.
Any questions from council?
Quickly.
Yes.
Sheriff, approximately how many sex offenders would we have, like, in a month?
Well, yearly there's about 200.
200 a year?
Correct.
Okay.
And they're required by law to register every year.
Okay. And they have to re-register?
Every year, correct.
Thank you.
And the commissioners approved this at their meeting last Tuesday, or this, was it 2
How
days?
come-
Yes, last week. Yes, thank you,
Now, how
sir.
come we've never had a fee? mean,
I believe it was never brought up to
Really?
council or commissioners.
Yeah, but almost every county in Indiana.
Correct.
Well, we need to do this. Thank you, I yield.
Something that,
Is $50 normal?
Yes, we checked with counties surrounding, just, we don't want to have us be way out of whack, so yeah, it's typically 50.
Okay.
I just had a quick question. What happens if they're not able to, or they just don't pay it? What's like?
If
the
they
next
don't,
step?
and that's one of the things I talked to my sexual offender guy that does all that. He didn't want us to go out and get warrants for them if they don't. And we'd have to get approval through the prosecutor in a way to do that. We'd try to just make sure, hey, you need to register before we go that route. And ultimately, it's up to the prosecutor if they would want to pursue that. But that's not our goal, is to relock them up. Our goal is to have them register like they're supposed to.
Did we just misadvertising. We didn't.
No,
get
it, well, that's the thing, actually, I consider the request to have been in on time because I had to go to the commissioners first. I think you first
Correct.
brought it up before the end of the year, didn't?
Yeah, and they weren't able to have a meeting to address it, and they
So,
did
and
the
then
first one this
it
year.
eventually got passed Tuesday, they passed it. But by delaying it to March, the only thing you're gonna accomplish is, losing out on a month's worth of, revenue. And this doesn't have, the deadline for submitting proposals to the council is there because on that Monday deadline, the next day we have to have the advertising to the newspaper in order to have the 10 days ad. This doesn't require that. It's required to be advertised after it's been finalized.
So we can address this next meeting?
You can. I'd say that would be you're only gonna lose out on a month's worth of revenue if
Well,
you,
but, I mean,
if,
what's required of us? We just hold a vote, right?
right?
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Well, I don't see why we don't.
But even at that, you're right, it doesn't have to be advertised as it is just an ordinance. But,
We're not doing anything illegal by moving on that next.
no, but there are deadlines in place for a reason.
Yeah.
And there's a history of things being added after a deadline.
All
And
right.
I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, we've missed a month anyway, and my argument would be if it was that important, this would have been taken care of at the end of last year. I'm not saying that this isn't important, but, I mean, I don't think it should be held over the council's head that this is put on the agenda after the deadline. I've seen it in the past.
On board with it, but we had some issues scheduling meetings from November until December. And so that's why it wasn't voted on then. We had every intention on doing that amongst with some other things, but we couldn't make quorum for almost 2 months. I think we maybe had one meeting in that whole entire time period. So I know that timing is of the essence, and I completely understand where you're coming from on that, but I just wanted to share with them. And I think actually, if I recall now, you actually entertained this in the summer, but we didn't move forward until late October. And again, we didn't have meetings just because of many reasons. So I know it's important to Sheriff to help with that funding. So I just wanted to share that information with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments about the ordinance? If there are none, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilwoman Wager, second by Councilman Thompson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.